The Armenian Quarter is one of the four quarters of the walled Old City of Jerusalem. Located in the southwestern corner of the Old City, it can be accessed through the Zion Gate and Jaffa Gate. It occupies an area of 0.126 square kilometers, which is 14% of the Old City's total. In 2007 it had a population of 2,424. In both criteria, it is comparable to the Jewish Quarter. The Armenian Quarter is separated from the Christian Quarter by David Street and by Chabad Street from the Jewish Quarter. The Armenian presence in Jerusalem dates back to the 4th century AD, when Armenia adopted Christianity as a national religion and Armenian monks settled in Jerusalem. It is thus considered the oldest living diaspora community outside the Armenian homeland. The quarter developed gradually around the St. James Monastery, which dominates the quarter, and took its modern shape by the 19th century. The monastery houses the Armenian Apostolic Church's Jerusalem Patriarchate, which was established as a diocese in the 7th century. The Patriarchate is the de facto administrator of the quarter and acts as a mini-welfare state for the Armenian residents. The Armenian community has been in decline since the mid-20th century and, according to one scholar, is in immediate danger of disappearing. Although formally separate from Greek Orthodox and Latin Christians, the Armenians consider their quarter to be part of the Christian Quarter. The three Christian patriarchates of Jerusalem and the government of Armenia have publicly expressed their opposition to any political division of the two quarters. The central reasons for the existence of a separate Armenian Quarter is the monophysitism and distinct language and culture of the Armenians, who, unlike the majority of Christians in Jerusalem, are neither Arab nor Palestinian. However, for all intents and purposes, the Armenians living in the Armenian Quarter are considered Palestinians by Israel and the United Nations. They have faced many of the same restrictions on their lives as have the Palestinians. Landmarks and institutions. Armenian religious cathedral of St. James is thought to have been founded in the 4th century, but the current structure dates to the 12th century. St. Tauros Church. According to local tradition, the church was built between 1270 and 1289 by Hedemai, the Armenian king of Cilicia, in memory of his son, Tauros, who was killed in a battle. The church was renovated to its current state in 1727. Church of the Holy Archangels, STS. Holy Translators School contains a kindergarten, elementary and secondary schools with a total of around 150 students. Cultural. The St. James Press was founded in 1833. Helen and Edward Mardigan Museum of Armenian Art and Culture was opened in 1969. Its exhibits consist of historical and religious artifacts, such as rugs, coins, copper cauldrons, ceramic tiles, a map, a replica of Johannes Gutenberg's printing press, etc. Kalausta-Gulbenkian Library, founded in 1925 through financing of British Armenian businessman and philanthropist Kalausta-Gulbenkian, for whom it is named. Officially opened on October 23, 1932. It is considered one of the world's most comprehensive Armenian intellectual resource centers, with its 100,000 book collection. On its opening day, it contained 25,037 volumes. 3 decades later, in 1963, the number reached around 50,000. St. Tauros Manuscript Library, founded in 1897, holds 3,890 inventoried and catalogued Armenian manuscripts, making it the second largest in the world, after the Malatenadaran in Yerevan, Armenia. In 1931 the number of catalogued manuscripts stood at 2,720. Other Armenian garden. Other churches. The Syriac Orthodox Street. Mark's Monastery is located on Ararat Street. The Assyrians, Syriacs share the Armenians' monophysitism in, hence tended to prefer to live under the umbrella of the larger and stronger Armenian community. the Greek Orthodox Church of St. George, Christ Church, a 19th-century Anglican church. The Maronite Church, the only Maronite place of worship in Jerusalem. Other Tower of David. History. Origins. In the early 4th century, Armenia, under King Tiridates III, became the first country to adopt Christianity as a state religion. A large number of Armenian monks are recorded to have settled in Jerusalem as early as the 4th century, after the uncovering of Christian holy places in the city. However, the first written records are from the 5th century. Armenian churches were constructed during that period, including the St. James Monastery. The latter was last expanded in the mid-12th century. An Armenian scriptorium was in operation by the mid-5th century. A secular community composed of merchants and artisans was established in the 6th century in the Zion Quarter, where an Armenian street existed. Byzantine, Arab, and Mamluk periods. In the First Council of Dvin, the Armenian Church broke off from the rest of Christianity by rejecting dual nature of Christ, which was agreed upon in the Council of Chalcedon of 451. Thus the Armenians found themselves in direct confrontation with the Byzantine Empire. Emperor Justinian I persecuted the Monophysite Armenians, forcing them to leave Jerusalem. A 7th-century Armenian chronicler mentioned the existence of 70 Armenian monasteries in Palestine, some of which have been revealed in excavations. The Byzantines ceded Jerusalem to the Rashidun Caliphate after a siege in 637. Until this point, Jerusalem had a single Christian bishop. In 638, Armenians established their own archbishop, Abraham I. He was officially recognized by Rashidun Caliph Umar. The foundation of the Armenian migration to Jerusalem thus solidified. In the 12th century, around 1,000 Armenians moved to Jerusalem with the Crusaders, presumably mainly from the Armenian Kingdom of Cilicia. In 1311, during Mamluk rule, Archbishop Sarkis assumed the title of Patriarch according to a decree by Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad. In the 1340s, the Armenians were permitted to build a wall around their quarter. This was signified that the Mamluk rulers felt that the quarter did not pose a threat. Destroying city walls and fortifications had been a staple of Mamluk governance in order to prevent the Crusaders from returning and re-establishing their rule. The Mamluk government also engraved the following declaration in Arabic on the western entrance to the quarter. The order of our master Sultan Jakmak has been issued, which stipulates that the tax is levied recently by the town governor regarding the payment by the Armenian enclosure, Der al-Armani, be cancelled, and it has been requested that this cancellation be recorded in the honored books in the year 854 of the Hijra. Anyone who renews the payment or again takes any tax of extortion is damned, son of the damned, and the curse of Allah will be upon him. Jerusalemite historian Mujir al-Din provided a detailed description of pre-Ottoman Jerusalem in 1495. He mentioned Dir al-Ma'an or Kanasat Yaqub, which is situated in the middle of the south part of the 19th century defined Armenian Quarter. The Armenian Quarter was unique among the quarters of Jerusalem in that it was an enclosure which developed along the years around the Armenian monastery. Ottoman period. During Ottoman rule, Jerusalem developed into a cosmopolitan city. There was religious tolerance, and an Ottoman administration existed to sort out religious differences between the rival Christian churches and Muslims. Israeli historians Kark and Oren Nordheim wrote, "The Armenian Quarter, although Christian, represented a distinct ethnic group with its particular language and culture, intent on retaining separate identity and unity, minimizing the contacts with Arabs and the Ottoman authorities for fear of persecution." However, the Armenian community in Jerusalem was Arabic-speaking and self-identified with Palestinian society. In 1538, the current walls of Jerusalem were completed on the orders of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. These walls, along with the internal walls built by the Armenians, determined the outline of the quarter. In the 1562-63 record, only 189 Armenians were counted, whereas 640 were counted by the Ottomans in 1690, an increase of 239%. According to the chronicler Simeon Lihatzi, only some 12 Armenian families lived in Jerusalem in 1615-16. The significant increase in the population in 1690 is attributed to urbanization experienced by the Armenians and other Christians. Thus Armenians came to make up 22.9% of Jerusalem's Christians by 1690, becoming the second largest Christian community. In the 19th century, most of the Armenian and Christian quarters had European-style gable roofs, as opposed to the domes preferred in the Muslim and Jewish quarters. In 1833 the Armenians established the city's first printing press. A seminary was opened in 1857. In 1855 the first photographic workshop in Jerusalem was founded in the Armenian Quarter. Schools for boys and girls were united in 1869 under the name Holy Translators School and became the first coeducational school in Jerusalem. In 1883, 102 Armenian families constituted the third largest Christian community in the Old City after the Greek Orthodox and Latin communities. Besides these residents, in the same year, 46 Armenian priests and monks and 55 servicemen lived within the St. James Monastery. According to the 1905 Ottoman census in the Old City, the Armenian Quarter had a population of 382, of which Armenians comprised less than one-third. Jews made up 33.2%, Christians 24.6% and Muslims 10.5%. The Jews, who numbered a little more than the Armenians, inhabited the eastern part of the Armenian Quarter, which in the second half of the 19th century, became the western part of the Jewish Quarter. World War I, British, and Jordanian periods. Prior to World War I, there were some 2,000–3,000 Armenians in Palestine, mostly in Jerusalem. Jerusalem was captured by the British in 1917 during the war. Thousands of Armenian genocide survivors from Cilicia found refuge in the quarter from 1915 and onward. In 1925, around 15,000 Armenians are believed to have lived in all of Palestine, with the majority in Jerusalem. During the British Mandate period, the number of Armenians is estimated to have reached up to 20,000. However, the 1931 British census showed only 3,524 Armenians in all of Palestine. In 1947, around 1,500 Armenians from Palestine repatriated to Soviet Armenia, marking the beginning of the long-term decline of the Armenian community of Jerusalem. During the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, the Armenian Quarter was damaged by bombs. It housed many Armenians from around Palestine. An Armenian civil guard, armed with what Der Matassian describes as makeshift weapons, was formed to defend the quarter. Over 40 Armenians died during the war. Israeli period. Jerusalem's Old City came under Israeli control in the aftermath of the Six-Day War in 1967. Issues. A major obstacle for the Armenians residing in the Armenian Quarter is their Jordanian citizenship, because of which the Israeli government considers them permanent residents, the same status as Palestinians. According to Armenian researcher Tamer Boyajan, for this reason, many of them have difficulty obtaining travel and marriage documents. They also face obstacles when attempting to bring spouses or other family members into Jerusalem. The Jerusalem Post also wrote that the Israeli bureaucracy considers Jerusalem Armenians to be Palestinians, which means endless delays in getting documents, and hassles at the airport. According to The Economist, as such, they have faced many of the same restrictions on their lives as have the Palestinians. With Israel blocking the construction of new buildings in their part of the city, the limited space in the overpopulated district makes housing expensive, and according to Boyajan, most Armenians, given their current income, simply cannot afford to maintain the primary residence there. Jewish settlement. The Armenian community is concerned that the Jewish Quarter, which shares a wall with the Armenian Quarter, will expand as the number of Jews in the Old City continues to grow while the Armenian population withers. The location of the Armenian Quarter, athwart the main access roads between the Israeli-controlled West Jerusalem and the holy sites within the Jewish Quarter and the Western Wall, has make Armenian properties a prime real estate in Israeli eyes. Since the start of Israeli occupation of the Old City in 1967, the Jewish Quarter has expanded by some 40%, and by 2000, 71 or 81 of the 581 properties in the Armenian Quarter were owned by Jews. According to Reuters, the Armenian Patriarchate shares a view held by the mostly Muslim Palestinians, that Israel's designation of the whole city as capital of the Jewish state means its control of residence and building permits is being used to press Arabs and other non-Jews to give up and leave. Israeli sovereignty over the Armenian Quarter would be, according to Usher, the worst future imaginable for the Armenian community. George Hintlian, an Armenian historian from Jerusalem, said in a 2010 interview, "The Israelis want to take over the Armenian Quarter. Every day they see what we have. They want it." Demographics. Armenians in Jerusalem try to maintain good relations with Arabs and Israelis, but they do not deny that their community has been affected by tensions in the city. In the past 2 decades, Armenians have been leaving Jerusalem in record numbers because of the economic and political woes that trouble the city. Catholic Near East Welfare Association. 1992. Writing in 2000, Graham Usher estimated that the Armenian Quarter had a population of 1,200. According to a 2007 study, the quarter housed 2,424 people. Armenian population decline. Armenians began emigrating from Jerusalem's Old City in the mid-20th century. Since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, due to being in the middle of the conflict between Arabs and Jews, and their feeling of loneliness, the lack of a long-standing political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for Jerusalem has been cited as the main cause of the decrease in the number of Armenians in the Old City, which fell by almost half from 1,598 in 1967 to 790 in 2006. Meanwhile, the Muslim population increased from 16,681 to 27,500 and the Jewish population from 0 to 3,089. The exodus of the Armenians intensified following the breakout of the First Intifada in 1987. According to Salag Momkian, the honorary Armenian consul in Jerusalem, as of 2009 around 600 Armenians lived in the Armenian Quarter. 2 articles, published in 2010 and 2011, put the number of Armenians in the Armenian Quarter as low as 500. Despite the drastic decline in the number of Armenians, Israeli scholar Daphne Simhoni wrote in 1983 that the existence of their church headquarters in Jerusalem provides for the continued presence of some clergy and a certain number of laity. On the contrary, American linguist Bert Vox argued in 2002 that the Armenian community of Jerusalem is in immediate danger of disappearing. The wealthy move into other parts of Jerusalem, and the closed environment in the Armenian Quarter spurs many to move to Beirut or the West. Armenian author Matthew Karanian wrote about the Armenian community of Jerusalem in 2010 as follows. The survival of the community is today in peril. The population is dwindling. If the old city were divided up today, the Armenians might barely command one street. They certainly would not lay claim to an entire quarter, as they have for centuries. Subgroups. Hatayan identifies three subgroups of Armenians living within the Armenian Quarter. The first group includes monks and clergymen, who live within the monastery. Lay people are divided into two groups: those living within the monastery compound, and those living in the Armenian Quarter, but outside of the monastery walls. Around two-thirds of laypersons reside within the monastery walls. Locally known as Vankatsi, they number up to 700 people. They do not pay rent to the Patriarchate. Those living outside of the monastery walls are called Kargakatsi. Their ancestry goes back centuries. They only pay municipal taxes. Bert Vox identifies two subgroups of Armenians. Kalakakis are the indigenous Armenophony inhabitants of the Armenian Quarter. They live outside the monastery walls, and attend the Church of the Holy Archangels. Kaoltagans are ancestors of Armenian from various parts of the Ottoman Empire who moved to Jerusalem following the 1915 genocide. They attend services at the Cathedral of St. James. The Kaoltagans in turn are reported to have labeled the Kalakakis as Pi's Arab, dirty Arab. The two groups each remained wary of the other for some time, and in fact did not intermarry on a significant scale until after World War II. Relations subsequently improved. Language. The Armenian dialect spoken in Jerusalem is highly distinctive, because it has geographically relatively isolated from the rest of the Armenian-speaking world. Arabic has a significant influence on it, while Hebrew has little to none, having been introduced to the region in the 20th century. Those Armenians whose ancestors came from Turkey following the 1915 genocide speak Turkish-influenced Western Armenian.